Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and very recently I was lucky enough to go and visit the Nintendo Museum. Like, the stars aligned. It wasn't a specific trip for that. It was my honeymoon. I was really hoping that things would coalesce so that I would be able to go, and then I failed to get tickets, but then I managed to get tickets later on. It was a whole thing that happened, but the point is, I managed to go. I was super excited. I was so keen to see all the stuff. You know, I know we'd had the reveal video and they'd shown off roughly what was there, but I was like, well, that's the taster. Let's have a look at the main course. And the truth is, well, you'll see. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. So when I first arrived, it was kind of delightful, to say the least. There was all this stuff. There was this like big courtyard that was completely unpopulated, people taking photos in Mario pipes and everything like that. And it was really, really wonderful. There were these like mosaics on the floor, like the tiles have been made out to like look like pixel art from the Mario games. It was absolutely wonderful. Incidentally, there will be some pictures, some footage in this as well. It's not just going to be my face, you lucky sausages. Although I'd like to point out that I was a good boy and I didn't take any videos or photos in the main exhibit, because it says you're not allowed. It's not hard to follow that rule. I got to play around with the toads as well, the singing toads. They actually sing. It was odd. You got to give those a whack. There was this great big mural with like loads of stuff from Nintendo's history, just like loads of artwork. It was nothing exceptional, but it was just like, wow. And it was kind of overwhelming. And there's so much hidden little stuff around. There was, well, it's not that hidden, but there was a Donkey Kong. There's like little pixel art Marios dotted around the place. Loads of little details that really made it feel special, you know? We then went up to the main exhibit, but only very briefly because there was an announcement on the tannoy saying, if you want to do the interactive exhibits, now's a good time because, oh, it's going to get busier later. Boy, howdy, were they right. But we took their advice and we went downstairs and did some of the interactive exhibits. And the interactive exhibits are pretty great, to be honest. Some of the wait times were a little bit annoying, particularly later on when loads of other people appeared, but overall, you know, it was fine. You know, there was one long queue for the shooting game, which we were like, no thanks. But I managed to have a go with like the big Wii remotes and everything like that, and that was, I mean, they weren't nearly as heavy as I expected, which is it makes absolute sense. I mean, it's designed for children and you rest them on the floor, but of all the things there, that was the one that I was really keen on because it was the whole motion control. It felt the most ridiculous. I would have liked to have had a go on the N64, but I didn't in the end. I think it was only Super Mario 64. I could well be wrong about that, but as a result, it felt like, nah, you know, I'll pick and choose because you only get a set number of coins and we wanted to use them wisely. I think we could have bought some more. I don't know. We used them up and we were like, yep, we think we've had our fill. So we didn't bother doing any more. But we did have a go on the SNES as well, which I don't have any footage of, but I do have a few pictures, courtesy of the Nintendo Museum. Because yes, when you do all these interactive exhibits, it randomly takes photos of you. I say randomly, it's probably very well timed. And those photos are then uploaded and you can download them from the Nintendo Museum website. You get a link sent to your email inbox. Your email inbox, and they're held up there for 30 days. You download them, bish bash bosh. The only thing is, they are crap quality, but hey, it was something I wasn't expecting. It's a nice freebie. Maybe I pulled some fun expressions. I haven't actually looked at them yet. One thing I did notice about the SNES big controller thing though, is that at least on that one, I can't speak for all of them, that one, the input latency, it really wasn't great. I know, it's really not a big deal. It's just designed to be a bit of fun, but considering it's kind of challenging you to do as much as you can, like we did a Zelda challenge and you have to do these like little mini challenges within A Link to the Past, considering that a lot of them, you know, you got two people, one person on the D-pad, one person on the buttons, you're having to try and coordinate that. Input latency isn't something I want. Again, I'm not trying to make it out to be a big deal and, oh, it's terrible, the input latency, because that's a really, really stupid argument, but it was a factor and I would have liked for it to be better, but at the end of the day, it was a big controller at the Nintendo Museum. It's not a big deal. Also had a go at the Ultra Hand thing. That was really good fun, actually. I didn't expect it to be as much fun as it was. And the same with the Game & Watch stuff. We did Ball, And that was that was honestly really good fun. Again, I didn't think it would be that much fun. I thought it'd be quite easy. And to begin with, yeah, just to get sort of, you know, do the standard thing, but then you have kind of like overtime and see how far you can go with your score. And then it gets really challenging and was surprisingly good fun. I genuinely really liked it. We also did a love tester thing, which was, it wasn't a love tester. It was basically like an interactive little minigame thing with, again, kind of motion. And it was, it was bizarre and it felt very much kind of like a Wii game, but, you know, kind of like iToy Connect, that sort of thing, because you're moving your body around and stuff like that. It was a bit of fun, you know? It wasn't anything exceptional, but it was a bit of fun, and the better you do, the better your love rating was, and considering it was our honeymoon, it was just as well we did well. That was all spread out throughout the day, though. We did have to cut our interactive exhibit short briefly because we had paid for a little something extra. You can go and make your own Hanafuda cards. And I had no idea going into that was an option, and I saw it and I was like, 2,000 yen each, I'll do it. I had no idea what to expect, and the reality of it was that it was a fairly simple kind of arts and crafts thing that's accessible to children and stuff like that. You've got stencils, but you are using real inks and things like that. And honestly, I thought it was actually pretty good. Like, I thought it was really good fun. It was simple, but, you know, you walked away with something quite substantial and felt quite personal, and, you know, you have to pick a month, and so there were two of us, obviously. So I picked, which one did I pick? I'm pretty sure I picked April, and Sasha picked October. I know it was those two, because April was when we got married, and October was our honeymoon. That was really good fun, and definitely one of the highlights of visiting there. I think for Sasha especially, that was the highlight, but she's more sort of arts and craft focused, and I'm more video games focused. Not that we don't dabble in each other's stuff from time to time. Naturally, we are a good couple. So I was riding high, you know, and we went downstairs and it's like, oh, yeah, it's time for some lunch. So we went and had some lunch, and we did have to wait for quite a while, but, you know, it was fine. It was lunchtime. You expect it. And the food itself is an interesting idea. They basically sell one thing. It's burgers and chips, and drink, obviously. They have some sides as well and stuff like that, but what you do is you create your own burger. You don't have to. There are some templates and you can just go, I'll have that one, please. But, you know, you can create your own, and come on, when in Rome, I was only going to be able to do this once. So we built our own burger. And I even have some footage from my iPhone of the building process. And to be honest, the building process was actually quite fun. You know, it felt a little bit Mario Maker, a little bit kind of Mario Paint in some ways. And yeah, a lot of charm going on there. Then the food arrived. So I specifically picked a red bun, and, you know, it was bright red in the picture, but I was never expecting it to be bright red. But, you know, I sort of thought, well, it's going to be pretty flippin' red. You can get some natural reds that are really very red. Cochineal is the obvious choice, but then it arrived and I unwrapped it, and that's not red. Again, I wasn't expecting it to be like bright red, like a neon Joy-Con or anything like that, but come on, faded pink definitely was a little bit disappointing, but what's far more disappointing is just how it looked. It was sweaty, it wasn't very well put together, it was rather small, but, you know, Japan, portions are, you know, reasonable there, but it was definitely visually quite disappointing. So it was all riding on the texture and the flavor. And Sasha's burger, by the way, didn't look that much better, although the bun was a lot more the color that she ordered, which was black. The rub of the matter is that the burgers were, as I said, sweaty. They were kind of muddled together. They weren't very clear and defined. And the flavor, the food was disappointing. The food was very disappointing. You know, it was just a burger and chips, although the chips were these weird, like, round things, more like, I saw them in a supermarket recently, actually, and they are, like, really, really cheap. And they were fine. Don't get me wrong, I'm not, like, complaining, although I think these were actually small potatoes. The main thing is the burger, and the burger was sweaty, disappointing, and the flavor was not that bold. And I know a lot of people who've been to Japan are going to go, well, Japanese cuisine isn't meant to be bold, it's meant to be gentle and subtle, and yes, I get that, but the sauce that I ordered was specifically meant to be the strong sauce, and I could barely taste it. Admittedly, part of that could have been the other flavors that I picked, the other things that I put into the burger were overpowering it, but I know my flavors, and if what they described in the menu was what I got, well, there wasn't enough of it. I don't want to get too much into the food, but the food was disappointing. However, there was a lovely stained glass Zelda window nearby, which made things a little better. And what makes it worse is it wasn't even cheap. Like, I know it's a captive audience and everything like that, and you're paying for the fun of building your own burger, but it was over 2,000 yen per person, which some people may be going, well, that's not a lot of money. But we had been to places where things were significantly cheaper, not like the tourist traps and stuff like that, but like we found significantly better food for a lot less, very easily. It's not a big deal, but considering I'd been having so much incredible food in Japan, it was disappointing. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's a weird novelty idea, which could work, but the execution was poor. I'm sorry, Hatena Burger. Not good. But that's just the food. We haven't even talked about the main exhibit yet. And this is where the Nintendo Museum is a phenomenal missed opportunity. Like, my God. What the main exhibit boils down to is game boxes. I don't even know if the games are in there, but game boxes, maybe with the games inside, from all three regions, some consoles, and some of their old stuff, actually, which was the most interesting stuff. Things like the Ultra Hand, and they did like some Disney board games and stuff like that. All sorts of bits and bobs like that. That stuff was quite interesting. Everything else beyond before the NES, or before the Famicom, I suppose, it was just game boxes. Very little information. There was some information, I will give it that, and there was some really interesting, rare, like special editions of things like Game Boys and stuff like that. But it was just game boxes from the three regions, you know, Japan, North America, Europe. It was just reams and reams of game boxes, and I'm sorry I can't show you more of this, but again, I didn't actually take any photos because I followed the damn rules. I think Sasha, my wife, put it best when she said, it's a lot like being in a retro game shop, and I think she's absolutely right. It's like going into an extremely well-organized retro game shop when nothing's for sale. It's bizarre. It's like, it is an impressive collection, don't get me wrong. It's a really impressive collection of games from all throughout Nintendo's history, or it would be if it wasn't actually made by the company that made the games. Like, they have no difficulty sourcing this stuff, or they shouldn't. They made them. And they didn't even manage to get everything. And I'm not saying they should have every game from throughout the Nintendo's history. You know, I'm pretty sure they've got every game that they published. I don't know that for certain, but there are some weird omissions, like Golden Sun was there. They had the Japanese box, they had the North American box, and then the European box, they just had a printout, and in the corner it said not available. And this isn't because there wasn't like a box in Europe or anything like that. They just didn't have it. And I know this because, well, one, I'm not an idiot. Two, they had a little sign from when something wasn't released in that region that was very, very different. It's like, not released in this region, which it wasn't. And thirdly, I mentioned it to a friend of the channel, Paul, and his response was just to reply with a picture of his own copy, European copy, boxed of Golden Sun. There were also some really weird omissions in regards to other things. Like, I really looked, and I can't say for certain that it wasn't squirreled away somewhere, but there was no GameCube ASCII keyboard controller. Which, I know, again, it's not a huge deal, but that is a big, weird peripheral that a lot of people know, a lot of people love, and a lot of people will want to see, and it just wasn't there. Having said that, there was one thing that was easily the highlight of the main exhibit for me, and I loved it. Basically, they did have prototypes. Like, they had prototypes of their consoles there. They had, I know they had the DS, and they actually had some prototypes downstairs as well, not in the main exhibit. Again, you weren't allowed to take photos of it, but they had loads of really interesting prototypes, some of which I'd never seen before, and some of them that was so basic, like the Virtual Boy controller, but it was just made out of foam, and they were just like finalizing the design, the shape of it. That's super interesting, and I was enamored by all of this small area marked storage with no information. The most interesting part of the entire exhibit was in a small area marked storage. as if they didn't care about it, as if it was an afterthought and they thought, oh, maybe we should put some of the prototypes. And I hasten to point out there were no labels, no information about them whatsoever. You just had to recognize what they were because they were just in a small glass room labeled storage. And there was another thing nearby that was also quite interesting, talking about the building we were in. And I had no idea, but it was used and it's been owned by Nintendo for ages, which explains why it's in the middle of flippin' nowhere in Kyoto. It was a building they already had and they repurposed it because it was no longer useful to them. That's really interesting. Give me more information like that, more stuff that I didn't know, but I knew. Everything else, I know when the Game Boy came out. I know that the DS was originally considered a third pillar. I don't even know if they actually mentioned that in the museum because all the information was so bland, none of it sunk in. At least from the main parts. It was fun to see the differences, the stark and the subtle, between all the different box arts. But so many of them were just identical, because a lot of them, certainly the more recent examples, it's just the same, but maybe the text on the front is Japanese as opposed to English. It's just not interesting. It just feels like such a missed opportunity. Nintendo has such a rich history. There was nothing about, the development or anything like that beyond a few maybe cursory mentions and, flipping prototypes stuck in a glass cabinet. It's not even a cabinet, it was glass room. I wanted to learn more stuff like we did with stuff like Iwata Asks. And, the little documentaries. Nintendo has teased little bits about development. And I'm not spoiled by Sakurai's videos, I promise. But things like how Miyamoto was inspired by the Inari Gates at Fushiri Inari. I really hope that's what it's called. Which is actually surprisingly nearby, and he got inspiration from going through that for Star Fox and going through gates and things like that. That's the stuff I want to learn about, the inspiration, the whole Pikmin stuff and him finding insects and collecting them. I want to learn more stuff about that. I want to see design documents, concept art. I want to see the process. I want to see the interesting stuff, not the stuff that I can find through a Google image search. The fact is that the Nintendo Museum, it's not much of a museum. It's just kind of a collection with very little information about it, at least the main exhibit. And that's a big thing. That is the most museum part, and it is the least museum I've been to in a long time. And it's not a factor of things like, oh, well, they'd have to translate it into so many languages or anything like that. I went to way smaller museums when I was in Japan, and they were perfectly happy to have English and Spanish and French and stuff like that in so many of their exhibits. There's no excuse, basically. There's no excuse. It's just not interesting enough. The interactive exhibits and the Hanafuda cards, great. I really enjoyed them. I loved pitching a sixer. I don't know baseball. And like the big controllers and the Game & Watch stuff, that was really good fun. But the main exhibit, it's not much of an exhibit. It's all talk and no trousers. There's no substance to it. It's just a collection of game boxes. Where maybe the games are inside, I don't know. Oh, also, this is a weird thing. They didn't have Echoes of Wisdom there. They just had the printouts again, like the Golden Sun thing. The game was out! The game was very much out! And you made it! The last thing we did, we followed Banksy's advice and we exited through the gift shop. And the gift shop, on the face of it, it looks quite sort of broad and like there's loads of stuff in there. And the one thing I wanted, like really wanted, they ran out of stock despite it being only one per person, which that was genuinely really disappointing. It was the little blind box like keyring things. No, they didn't have any left. I saw them the first time I quickly passed through and yeah, I didn't pick anything up then because I thought, they're one per person. There'll be plenty. More fool me. And like the cushion pillow things, they're really good fun. Completely impractical. I couldn't bring any back because they were massive and I only had one suitcase and it was medium sized. But the vast majority of everything else in the shop was kind of copied and pasted, but just for each console. Like, oh, there's a mug with the N64 logo and a notebook and like some little stickers and stuff like that. And there was a t-shirt and more besides. But then you moved over and it was the same thing again, but this time for the GameCube, and it was just repeated ad nauseum. So there wasn't actually that much. I mean, there was, but it was all kind of safe. I mean, I did buy stuff. I've got the this is just the box, but I got a Virtual Boy mug, because what the hell else am I gonna buy? I know what an N64 is. I wanted the funny console. It is just the gift shop, it's not a big deal, but again, it feels like a missed opportunity. There was some exclusive stuff that was kind of fun. There was like a flannel, I'll go and get it. There's like this flannel with like original artwork on it for the Nintendo Museum, which is, it's kind of fun, but it is just a flannel. And there were other bits and bobs, like I think there was some glassware, but nothing that I was like really super into. It was all about the hardware and not so much about the software, which I understand, you know, you've got the Nintendo store in Japan, I meant to say Tokyo, and Kyoto and stuff like that. That feels that niche, but it just, again, it feels like a missed opportunity. There's so much cool stuff they could do, and they've done some of it. They've done some of it. And this is what the rub is for me. The Nintendo Museum doesn't feel like it's finished. There is so much they could do with it, and they just haven't done it. And overall, I did enjoy my time there, I did. It was good. I enjoyed my time. I would say that the Nintendo Museum is worth a visit if you're in the area. I would not make a specific trip to go there. I mean, if you're in Kyoto, yeah, you know, pop over, but don't like go to Japan just for it, or don't just go to Kyoto to go to the Nintendo Museum. Thankfully, there's loads of other stuff in Kyoto that is well worth your time. But yeah, it's underdeveloped, it's underbaked, it's good, but my god, it could be so much better. But what do you think? Do you think I'm being an old grouch? Do you think I just already know too much about Nintendo, and so therefore it's not for me? I've heard that argument before. Let us know with a comment down below, but for now, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you muse upon what I've just said with that subscribe button, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.